This is the LodgeNet GameCube controller. If you grew up in the mid to late 90s to pretty much all the 2000s like I did, you probably at least encountered one of these at the very least. They were used in hotels to play GameCube games in your room on demand, for a hefty fee of course, and there were other variations, such as the Nintendo 64 variation and Super Nintendo variation. So why'd I bring up the GameCube variant specifically? Because that and a GameCube disc are the only official way of playing Mario Kart Double Dash. Let's talk. The GameCube is one of my favorite systems of all time. I would have to say it's tied with the Wii. Both systems had amazing libraries of games that utilized nearly every Nintendo IP in fun and unique ways. There are so many classics on the system, from Luigi's Mansion to Mario Sunshine, Mario Kart Double Dash, F-Zero GX, Wario World, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, Pikmin, and so many others. But there's a problem GameCube games have that no other Nintendo games have, and that's the fact that most of them have never been re-released. Most GameCube games have never gotten a re-release outside the GameCube. There are a few new play control games and remakes, but a vast majority of GameCube games remain unplayable outside of a GameCube or GameCube compatible Wii. I mentioned earlier that you could theoretically find a hotel that still uses LodgeNet to play GameCube games, but considering most hotels phased out LodgeNet nearly a decade ago, it is nearly impossible. The point of throwing that in there wasn't to use LodgeNet as an example of an alternative to play GameCube games. It was an example to show how there really is no alternative. And in this video, I'll be sharing the big reasons why GameCube games aren't just a want on the Switch, but why they literally need to come to the Switch. As I mentioned before, GameCube games are only officially playable using GameCube discs on GameCube compatible hardware. If you have a collection of GameCube games and a working GameCube or Wii, that's great. But unlike something like the NES or Game Boy games which could probably survive the apocalypse, the GameCube uses discs. Not only are the discs more fragile, but the laser that reads them can eventually fail. The good news is that most Nintendo consoles are built like a tank. Gee, I would hate if they ever drifted in quality. But as time goes on, hardware failure is inevitable. The Wii I got 10 years ago was having problems reading discs. I had to replace the disk drive to get it working normally again, and I'm sure others will face this problem too. I also take really good care of my games. I always make sure they stay in the case if they're not being used. But little Timmy probably didn't. Not only can discs and hardware fail, technology just changes. HD TVs are the norm now, and some TVs don't even have an input for compositor component. The GameCube and Wii can't natively output to HD, and are incompatible with some modern TVs. But if GameCube games were on the Switch, all these problems would be eliminated. The Switch outputs to HDMI, so playing GameCube games on your modern TV will be easier than ever before. There is also no need to track down a copy of your favorite GameCube game, because it'd all be readily available on the Switch. And speaking of, as much as I love the GameCube, it didn't sell well. It only sold around 21 million consoles, with no game ever reaching the 10 million mark. But the thing is, most GameCube games that are made by Nintendo are considered classics. They're highly sought after. So what do low sales and high demand mean? High prices. I thank God every day I got my GameCube games when I did, because back then, they were pretty cheap. But it's been a long time since 2012. Some of these games have reached over $100. That's insanely expensive for a game. There are a couple I really want to get my hands on, but the high prices are prohibitively expensive. Having them on the Switch, they'd probably be around $20 at the most. This would make them far more accessible to the fans. So many people want to play Chibi Robo and Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, but not many are willing to pay the extreme prices to get them. That's why people emulate. There's debate about ethics of emulation, but in all honesty, I have no issue whatsoever if a company is not willing to give players an alternative to play the games. And besides, Nintendo hasn't produced GameCube games in over a decade, so they're not gaining anything from not re-releasing them. All sales are second-hand nowadays, so having GameCube games available on the Switch for reasonable prices would not only make the fans extremely happy, but it would also make Nintendo's bank account happy too. Literally, all they have to do is re-release GameCube games on the Switch, and all they gotta do is watch the cash come in. With Nintendo making money and the fans being happy they can finally play these games for the first time, or just replay them, everyone will be happy. The Switch has a problem whether you want to admit it or not when it comes to first-party games, and it's unfortunately been pretty lacking. No year has managed to top 2017, and droughts are still a huge problem, especially this year. You know what would make them more manageable? the ability to play GameCube games. With high prices for the discs, the hardware becoming less reliable, and high demand and prices for these games, it would be great being able to have them on the Switch. For many people, this will be their first time playing a lot of these. Without the Virtual Console, I wouldn't have been introduced to so many classic games. A lot of time I spent on my Wii was playing Virtual Console games, and it got me interested in so many series. While I do wish the Switch had more new and exciting first-party games, I would be excited for the re-release of GameCube games, and that would be awesome to see. There are still quite a few GameCube games that I have yet to play, or would just like to replay in HD. So there you have it. These are the biggest reasons why GameCube games need to come to the Switch. While I highlighted GameCube specifically, Nintendo really needs to re-release all their legacy content. We need more than just NES, SNES, and a few arcade titles. Where are the Game Boy games, DS games, N64, Wii, and even Virtual Boy games? Fans deserve an alternative to play these games, and it's not cool we're stuck with the NES and SNES. And not only are we missing out on replaying some of these awesome games, Nintendo is missing out on a lot of money. So feel free to share this video, share it with Nintendo, and get the message out there. Because the GameCube has some truly fantastic games that are not easily accessible anymore, and fans deserve a chance to play them for the first time, or just replay them. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and keep calm and Dada on.